Hello and good evening, and welcome to Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Also, the most prompt, I should say. I'm kicking myself that we started 1 minute late, and so I'm giving myself a virtual pat on the back that's about as bad as it gets. Thank you everybody for being here and spending some time with us on a Wednesday night. Pardon me. Thank you so much, Laura Waldy, for the gifting the membership. Highly, highly appreciated. Thank you so much to the Off-White Lotus for the super sticker. How nice of you. What a nice way to kick off the live stream. And thank you, Farm Girl, for the gift of memberships as well. I love this. I show up a minute late and all of a sudden people start throwing super stickers and memberships at us. I love that. Maybe I should do that more often. And Kathy, love Kathy, says, love to Josh, Tiff, Kay, Afton, and Shy Gal for such an amazing community, and I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much to the entire crew who puts this together and to all of our mods, and hello to everybody who's in the chat, Laura Waldy and Pammy and Emily Flotilla and Kathy and Rachel B and everybody else. All right. Oh, my favorite YouTube gentleman. Oh, I appreciate that. Donna Barnes. Thank you. All right. This is the plan for this evening. We are going to be talking first off about Lori Vallow. No, this is not an old episode. No, this is not on repeat. No, this is not something that you tuned into an episode from a couple of years ago. Lori Vallow is about to start trial yet once again, and we asked for the expert, our resident expert on Lori Vallow. Gigi from Pretty Lies and Alibis is going to be joining us, and thank you so much, Annalie Finch, for the super sticker. Appreciate you guys this evening. She's going to be joining us to talk about the attempted murder case now, hopefully the last trial that we will ever be seeing with Lori Vallow, the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux. This is again out of Arizona. Again, she is representing herself, but she's brought an extra dose of drama to this one, including showing up in a wheelchair and talking about how she's just beside herself with the vapors and can't continue trial, and she's got a boo-boo and a headache, and the judge made her pick a jury anyways. So we'll talk a little bit about that and what to expect in this trial. And then we're going to run our poll, which we always like to do on Wednesdays for the time that we have left over. Go to Golden Girl 9. Thank you so much for the gift of memberships. You guys are fantastic this evening. Here's what's going to go on the poll. Karen Reed, surprise, surprise, if you haven't heard, she's on trial. I actually have I try to avoid Karen Reed, to be honest with you, because I feel like you can find whatever Karen Reed news you want anywhere you go on YouTube. But I actually have some interesting thoughts on what took place in court this week and a recent filing, this missing witness filing. I just, I thought, hey, let's put her on the poll because I'm actually going to have some things to add to the conversation. So we could talk about Karen Reed or Dale Warner. This is the gentleman charged in the missing person now murder case of D. Warner. He had some hearings and some recent rulings. We can talk about that. And then a very, very tragic new case that has been making the rounds in the news about a man named Travis Decker. And what started out as the missing persons of his three beautiful, by the way, baby girls, daughters. They've now been found dead. The circumstances are horrific and nightmarish. And it's one of those things that really strikes home with me, being a father of three beautiful girls. We could talk about that, just what's the latest on that. And thank you so much, Melissa Kalanko, for becoming a member. So anyhow, the poll is Karen Reed, Dale Warner, and Travis Decker. If you want to talk about one of those, please put in your votes. But I'm going to stay quiet other than to say stick around to the very end because we do have some announcements that I want you guys to know about. But without further delay, hey, Gigi.
Hi, everybody. I just noticed my little lights are leaning.
Oh, yeah. What's going on? You got me doing one of these things.
I know it's going to bug me. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm usually pretty symmetrical, but we did have an earthquake like a week and a half ago. So maybe it's
really
in South Carolina, of all places. The earth shook.
Do you ever get earthquakes, or is that the first one you've experienced?
We'll have some close to here, but you don't feel them. But that one we kind of felt. It was weird. I was like, this is it. This is how I go. Earthquake in Greenville. The end is near.
Yeah, that's kind of
Hey,
par for the
Jules.
course for us out here. We're actually, what was funny though, the other night we're laying in bed and it feels like an earthquake. There was this like huge rumble that took place, and Tiffany turns to me and goes, "What the heck was that?" And I thought it was an earthquake, but it just didn't seem right. And then I go to my most trusted source for breaking news, which is the Neighbors app. Do you have that on your phone?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
Yep.
go on that and it's a zillion different people going, "What was that loud bang?" And I'm telling you, before it was on Twitter, before it was on anywhere else, we found that it was actually one of the SpaceX rockets re-entering off of the coast of California, and that was the, I don't know if it's the sonic boom or if it's the re-entry to the atmosphere or whatever it was, but it was startling. Like it, but it felt like an earthquake. Anyhow, just
Yeah.
we're all here. We all survived. I don't know
That's
how we
good.
got sidetracked by that, but we're here. Thank you again for joining us this evening. I appreciate it. We're going to talk about Lori Vallow, your favorite topic in the entire world. When did this entire saga start? When did you start talking and covering Lori Vallow and Charles Daybell, and all of that? Chad Daybell, pardon me.
So the day they found the kids' bodies, I'm just a few days away from the 5-year anniversary of the launch of the podcast. The day they found the kids' bodies, my best friend, who I call Fruit Loop, and all the original alibis will know, we started on an iMac with a built-in microphone and had been talking about it for a while, covering the case very closely. I'd done true crime years before, and this case just really kind of sucked me in. A little bit of COVID boredom. We were like, what can we do? Start a podcast like everybody else. And so,
Right.
yeah, we're coming up on 5 years, and I'm 5 episodes away from 1,000. So it's, yeah, a long time.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Wow.
I'm
That is
really,
a huge accomplishment. 1,000 episodes.
yeah, I'm very excited. It's been a long, I mean, because we started with this case and here we are. It'll be 6 years next week on July the 11th that Charles was shot, the first victim. So this is just a long time coming for this last trial.
So 6 years since she started her killing spree, but 5 years since it's been involved in the court system.
Pretty much, yeah. So the day they found the kids' bodies, June 9th, I believe, the 6th or the 9th.
Yeah, June
Uh,
9th,
June 9th.
2019.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I
Thank
get
you,
my
Lee T, for that.
Yep, June 9th. So yeah, it's been June 9th was when the legal side really kicked off. Although she had been arrested that February for not producing her kids to the Rexburg police. And then it took, if you remember, so hard to remember back, but I mean, it took months before we got murder charges, but they were going to the grand jury,
Right.
and just making sure that they were doing everything solid. But it felt like forever that Chad was arrested. He wasn't arrested till that day. And so it's hard to think back to when we were like, are they going to get charged for murder? But, these things aren't quick, and the prosecutors and the investigators were doing an amazing job up there. So it just took time. And in the end, we got convictions up there. So it was worth
Yeah.
the wait.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the thing about the judicial system, I've been dealing with it my entire life, is it may take a long time. It may seem like it's taking way longer than it should, but you should, for the most part, be patient, because that usually means it's being done the right way. When things are
Exactly.
hurried along is when you run into problems. So,
Yep.
so far, I think we can all feel blessed that this has turned out in a favorable way towards getting justice for this entire family. And this sounds like it might be the end of it, right? This is kind of the weird last chapter in this entire saga. Can you update us a little bit about what this trial is about? Because this one is to me, the least of, I don't want to say it's insignificant, but when you're looking at the magnitude of what we've already gone through with the murder of children and wives and husbands and everything else, this one is not on the seriousness scale as serious.
By inches only, though. Brandon he was a near miss. I mean, it was in the door jamb right above his head, the size of a dime. And, just 1 week to the day later after the attempt on Brandon is when he tried to shoot Tammy Daybell in the driveway and missed. So, unfortunately for Charles, it seemed Alex needed to be right there within arm's length of you to be successful. But thank goodness for Brandon, because Brandon has 4 beautiful children. And man, I mean, he was almost victim number 5. So this is the last pending charge we have. However, um, if you look through the Gilbert files, it will say that on a specific date, this is when Chad, Lori, and Alex began to conspire to murder Brandon. So in the state of Arizona, there's no statute of limitations on conspiracy to commit murder. Is it possible one day in the future, Chad Daybell or his ex-wife, who I call Melanice Pulowski, face charges? Maybe, maybe not. But at least for now, for Lori, it seems like this is the end for her. And I think this is going to be a much quicker trial than Charles's even. Not even sure she has any defense witnesses lined up. So we'll see what happens. I'm headed out Sunday, and I'll be there for the duration.
If I missed this, forgive me, but tell us where this crime, this is the attempted murder, Alex Cox shot at Brandon Boudreaux. Explain to us who Brandon Boudreaux is, by the way. Missed him. He survived, thank God. But where does this fall in the timeline of when they were going about everything they were doing?
This is after the children were killed and put on Chad's property. So then it was Brandon, the attempt on him. 1 week to the day later was the attempt on Tammy in the driveway where he missed. And unfortunately, 10 days after that, she was asphyxiated and killed. So he's, right there after the kids, but before Tammy. And he was going through or I believe at that point they were divorced. And, it was kind of one of those same things where he was sort of blindsided like Charles in that, hey, I want to get divorced. And he's like, where did this come from? So there was a lot going on, but important to note, she was still paying on that life insurance policy. She was the sole beneficiary. So, you start to look into that common theme, I guess you would say. Charles had the life insurance. Tammy had life insurance. Brandon had life insurance. So, it kind of makes you wonder. I believe it was still effective when he was shot at, if I'm not mistaken. And then you think about the 4 kids of theirs, because throughout the trials, we've seen texts where Brandon's kids were in the car with Lori and Melanice, and Chad's talking about turning up the paint on them. One of those kids had been deemed dark. So I mean, for a million reasons, we're also lucky that Alex missed Brandon, because not only Brandon, I think those kids would have been at major risk too.
God, where does Charles Vallow's murder fall in respect to this?
He was the first. So that was July 11th, 2019 that Charles was shot. He was the very first, coming up on 6 years just next week. And I have to do the finger counting. I'm an idiot in math. So just about a week from now, will be 6 years, and he was the first victim. And then, within a couple of weeks in September, Tylee first, then JJ, the attempt on Brandon, and then the attempt on Tammy, and then her murder. So they were just, on a serial killing spree. I think, Lori qualifies as a serial killer. I think it's 3 victims or more with a cooling off period. So
FBI,
she's a serial killer, as is Chad. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I had not thought about it that way, but yeah, according to the FBI definition, she might qualify. The only thing I wonder is if they would say, well, this is kind of all part of a targeted overall scheme, but I don't think that would disqualify it. Not that it really matters. I mean, end of the day, who cares what kind of distinction you get under the FBI? You still have now been responsible for taking the lives of 4 different people. No, incredible. Talk to us about, though, this isn't without issues. Again, first of all, you've got the shooting took place. Alex Cox is the one who's the shooter. So again, you've got the person on trial is one person removed from the actual crime itself. So we're talking about a conspiracy to commit this crime, which does create an extra level of proof that the prosecution has to show. And then the fact that he's not available because he's passed, now they can't even present that person to jurors in explaining all of this, which we saw in the case with Charles Vallow. Again, Alex Cox was the trigger man. He wasn't present. So maybe it's not as big an issue, but talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, they have Alex's phone pings from Rexburg all the way down to Gilbert, Arizona. And then the phone communications between the parties, conversations with Lori, more conversations with Chad. Really, what's interesting is right before he left to go to the Phoenix area to do this, he left his phone in Lori's apartment. Now, around the time of the shooting, Lori or somebody in that apartment sends text messages to Alex's phone. There's a 20-something minute conversation. To me, it just screams we're trying to set up an alibi for him. But of course, Alex, not super smart with his electronics. The day they found the kids' bodies, they were led there by his phone pings that was tied to his Google account. And so the same here. They have him on license plate readers. And don't forget, we have videos of Lori 2 times going into that storage unit to put that spare tire and the back seat into that storage shed that she rented 24 hours before the attempt on Brandon, and then removing it. She first went with Chad, and then later, after Alex returned, I believe she went with Alex, or she was there again a second time. So there's some things there as far as the video proof of why would the tire need to be in there? But also in the Gilbert report, there were a lot of redactions. So I think, like in the other trials, we're going to learn some little nuggets in this trial that we haven't heard yet, because there were pages that were just blacked out. So I think that's where your key evidence against her is going to be. But even after the attempt, there were texts. I'm sitting here thinking I have to connect in Houston Sunday, and I've been thinking about Texas and barbecue all afternoon. But so you have texts between Lori and Melanice where they're using this common language of, do you think he's ready, or something to that effect, which they used with Tammy Daybell when she was possessed and used with Charles. And so for me, I'm not one of the people that feels this is a huge stretch for a jury. Trina Kay did a beautiful job of really taking a case that, she didn't have her hands dirty per se that they could prove, but really just put it to that jury in a very simple way, in a convoluted story to people who say they have no knowledge of. And I don't think this will be any different. And we have the victim on the stand. We have the victim in the courtroom. This is the first time in all of this the victim lived, and will be able to give insight into Lori, because Brandon, was married to Melanice for over 10 years. He is one of the few people that can give us insight into Lori before Chad and after Chad. And also, I'm not sure this will come out, but he watched his wife kind of morph from being somebody he had to drag to church to going to temple every day, and everything was the end of the world. So I think, depending on how much of that they let in, I think there's a good chance here, but we'll see. It's a jury of 12 ultimately that will decide. And look, in Charles's case, we know at the very beginning of deliberations, I believe there were 3 that were for not guilty. So we'll see what comes out of this. But so after this, she will go back to Idaho, and that is it. As far as future charges for anybody related to Brandon's case remains to be seen. But as far as Lori, this chapter's over, and the judicial process after 5 very long years comes to an end.
Incredible. I do think that you are right, though. Probably the biggest game changer, not that they're identical trials, but the fact that you do have a surviving victim is very different. Like, you've got someone who can add some perspective and color to the case that you didn't have in the previous case. And we've talked a lot on this channel about that badge cam footage with Charles Vallow, talking about the threats and talking about how he's in fear and how that wasn't admissible in that trial, and how that may have been hamstrung the prosecution. Obviously not enough, but could have presented problems. They're not going to have any of those issues here when you've got the actual victim being able to testify to a lot of the circumstances leading up to and surrounding the shooting or attempted shooting of him. Which, though, also brings up an interesting situation in that she is representing herself again, and she may be cross-examining this man. What do when she represented herself for the Charles Vallow murder, it almost seemed to me like this was attention seeking, and she, she's a narcissist and was going to have her day in court. That all fell apart. Now she's like shifted gears into one of these kind of whiny, reluctant defendants who doesn't even want to show up to court and tell us the latest. She's showing up in a wheelchair and saying she's got a headache and she can't be forced to do the trial, and the judge is having none of it.
Yeah, no, and I tell you what, watching them two together, it almost seems like they've become the bickering brother and sister a bit. It's like he just shuts her down. I mean, the other day, I tell you what, Josh, when she said, "You're welcome to come to my cell and check on me," he's like, "I will take a pass on that."
Take a hard pass.
I was dead. I was like, "Oh, wow, that's good." But yeah, I think too, what I've seen between Charles's trial and this trial is that she is a lot more frustrated with the process and gets verbally frustrated in court a lot more to me than she did during Charles's trial and the pre-trial hearings that they had. And I think that's because she was convicted for Charles. I really think in her mind, she thought she would convince that jury that she was innocent. And look, for a hot minute, three of them were convinced that maybe there just wasn't enough there. But I think at this point, knowing this is sort of the last time she's going to be transported from A to B, from here on out, it's going to be gray walls for the rest of her life. Is that reality starting to sink in with her? That on top of that, nothing's going her way. I mean, she tells the judges, "Well, you don't, grant any of my motions." And he's like, "Well, if they were valid, I would." So it's going to be interesting. I really, I wish I could be there for openings and Friday, but my grandmother just had surgery. She's 90. She lives here. I wanted to spend a few more days making sure she's good to go. But next week should be interesting. I love watching that jury, Josh, because their faces and their body language tell a tale. And the one holdout that we know of, which was the older gentleman who was the subject of, he maybe said some things that could have been problematic for the conviction in the state. I noticed, just that body language of like being closed off or not super receptive at times to the prosecution, and no disrespect to him. And that is my interpretation only. But I love watching that jury. And, if she gets in this mode where she gets combative with a living victim, most juries aren't going to like that. So I'm just curious to see how she's going to react. Like when Nancy Joe said, "Don't flatter yourself." I went back and watched that 1,000 times, and she pauses because she just wasn't used to that clap back.
Yeah.
And so, if Brandon's on that stand and he is an upstanding guy, I don't see him, being rude to her. He is just an overall good dude. But, if he has a moment where he is looking at the woman, who is, to me, her and Chad are so much like Charles Manson in that their hands were technically clean from the murders, but, orchestrated by them. Does he have that moment where you almost took me away from my kids? You almost killed me. It was you. I'm just curious. And also for her, I'm sure it has to be intimidating to question somebody like Brandon or Kay. With Kay, it was very brief. She did not go long. And so I'm curious, especially with Brandon on cross, how she's going to do. It's going to be all very interesting. But Brandon was married to Lori's niece, Melanie's, for over 10 years. Charles and Brandon invested in a business in Hawaii together, and they all got along. So this is not somebody who barely knew Lori or barely knew Charles and the kids. This was somebody who was immersed in their life. So a lot of different emotions, I'm sure, going into this.
Yeah. I'm no psychologist, but it does seem to me like in her kind of egomaniac narcissism that she felt like she was going to win and she was going to convince people. And then when she didn't, it's no longer fun. And now the judge doesn't rule in her favor. And that the judge is not ruling in her favor because she makes ridiculous arguments. And now she's not getting her way in court. And now all of this kind of fun and spectacle and playing dress up and playing lawyer has lost all of its glimmer to her. And she's just kind of pouty. I mean, really, that's what it seems like. It's like a child who's pouting and reluctant that they have to go to school the next day, and now she has to show up and deal with this other trial. And she wasn't all that effective in the first trial when she actually cared, and I can't imagine that will translate to her being any kind of effective in this trial. Let's take do you mind if we take a couple of questions so I have some time with you?
Not at all. I love
Okay,
it.
great. If I didn't say Garden Girl 9, thank you so much for that.
One thing one of your listeners pointed out is, essentially Lori ruined their marriage. And yeah, I mean, that's something Charles warned Brandon about before Charles's number was blocked from Brandon's phone, and Brandon didn't find out until after Charles had been killed. But, Charles did warn Brandon, like, Lori is spending so much time with Lori. In other words, just be careful because you see what's happened with me. So poor Charles was warning everybody until the day he died.
Incredible.
And he was right, because they ended up and got divorced. And, I'm not sure about the custody agreement now. I know when it was finalized, she had 50-50, and she has a son with Ian Pulowski, her husband that she knew for 2 weeks. So who knows what's going on there. But yeah, a lot of living victims. And, Brandon's oldest son, before we take questions, I just want to point out, he got very emotional on the stand at Lori's trial, where he talked about his oldest son was just so good with JJ. He's high maintenance, he's autistic, so you have to prepare for when he comes over. And his oldest son took a very strong bond with JJ. And you think, I believe he's a teenager now. So knowing all this and your dad's going on trial because somebody tried to kill him, you think about the living victims and that wide net of living victims, it just keeps going and going.
Yeah. Yeah. Really, I mean, it really is. I mean, it's off the charts type of sociopathic behavior to imagine that people would just go about starting to systematically murder their loved ones. The people that, the people closest to them, they're just going about systematically murdering them. And I don't care what reason is provided for it, whether it's some sort of fringe, radical religious beliefs, or if it's money. Either way, you're talking about truly psychotic behavior. Melissa, thank you so much. I think I had thanked you, but I wanted to make sure I didn't miss anybody here. Emily Flotilla says, thank you for the spot on commentary. Janice became a YouTube member. Shy Gal says, everybody vote for Karen Reed. All right, we'll see how that turns out. Johnny Knoxmill, my friend, says, Mark Furman's misconduct happened prior to OJ investigation, and Michael Proctor's misconduct happened during the Karen Reed investigation. Free Karen. I can't imagine what it is he's talking about. I'm not sure what he's alluding to. All right. Alicia K. Mayo says, I wonder, will Gigi's daughter be with her again this trial? Her videos with them were so fun. Is that the plan?
No, she's back in New Orleans. They just went to Florida. So she's like, I really need to get a job and register for school. I'm trying to talk my son into going, but I may be solo this trip. That's okay. But it was great. No. And I'm glad that you guys got to meet her who were out there. But no, it's going to be me, but I'm going back to the Grand Canyon. So I'll just be soloing it with a selfie stick. So look for those.
Sounds good. JC Broadway says, I wonder if she'll have a tantrum in front of the jury this time. I don't know about that. I mean, one, answer that question, but my question that I forgot to ask you earlier is, I was shocked she didn't testify last time. Do you think she might actually take the opportunity this time?
No, I don't think she wants to be subject to cross-exam. I don't know that she'll lose her temper per se, but she can definitely get forceful and emotional enough, at least in Charles's trial sitting in there. Some of the jurors got uncomfortable at times where she got very passionate or, kind of wanted to, some of the questioning, specifically with like Nancy Joe, you could just tell that it was very uncomfortable for those jurors. So more than an outburst, I think maybe just the way she approaches certain witnesses or things like that might be even worse than a tantrum when it's directed at somebody who may be a victim or somebody who's just up there telling their truth. I find that was when I saw the most sort of shifting in the seats and like, I'd rather be anywhere but here. But then when Nancy Joe clapped back, I mean, there was one juror who was like trying to hide his giggles. I had to bend down and act like I was tying my shoe because I was going to get kicked out of court. I was dead.
It is amazing how much we miss out. And that's why I'm so glad that you're going to be there. And I hope you allow us to bring you back on again to talk about it, because when you're watching a trial and you're not able to see the jury, you really are missing out on a huge portion of what's taking place in that courtroom. It's one thing for us to be watching these witnesses and how they respond and how the attorneys respond, and we all kind of have our own reaction as if we're jurors ourselves. But when you're in court looking at those jurors, you get a whole different perspective. Sometimes they're not having the reaction you might imagine. Sometimes they are taking vigorous notes during something that you don't think is that important, and they've got all their hands down when you think that this is the most important testimony coming out. Have you noticed that?
It's so true. I mean, there are times and really starting from Murdaugh, when I sat in through that trial, it was interesting to watch those jurors. And I think several of us had Egg Lady pegged as a not guilty. But you do. I mean, it's just I was kind of trained to watch the jury years ago when I did true crime. That was sort of my job in the courtroom, and it is very revealing. And you can see when they're buying something and when they're not. These little subtle, subconscious, physical things that they do tells a whole story. And so that's my favorite part of trial, is to sit and watch that jury and just make my own notes and go back and then, if we know there was a split, say, I think it was this person, that person, maybe we know Egg Lady was going to be a not guilty if she had been a deliberating juror. So yeah, it really is a whole different dynamic to every trial that we watch from home, to not see that jury, but to be there in person. It adds a whole different dynamic to it.
Yeah.
It changes it entirely. And I want to give a big shout out to Gossip, Rumor, and Innuendo. She cracks me up. I watch her stuff every day. She's in chat here, and I love her content. So hey, girl.
There she is. Jurors are regular people too. Are
It's
they?
true.
They totally are. And I will tell you what, too, along this point, the most skilled trial attorneys are the ones who are most in tune with and receptive to and empathetic of the jurors and their responses. I mean, it's one thing, I've seen plenty of what I would call very skilled trial attorneys, and especially it seems to be on the defense side where they get a little more, have a little more character to them. And you see them doing stuff in court and you might be thinking like, oh my God, this guy's killing it. And they've got this kind of bravado about them, and the jurors are not responding to it, And that was one of the things I was always very sensitive to, is that if I'm going to come after a witness on the stand, and if I'm going to really give them a lot of snark and a lot of attitude and whatever I'm going to do, I'm looking corner of my eye the entire time. How is the jury responding to this? Because if I get a signal that they're turned off by it, then I'm not effective. Doesn't matter how great it looks, how well it plays out on TV. I'm not effective.
Yep. All these years of preparation, all the hours, it just comes down to 12 strangers. And did you do your job in convincing them, no matter what side you're on? Yeah. So it's 12 people who are regular people like us. And that's, I think that's the beauty of it too.
Yeah. Let's get to a couple more questions here. Shy Gal, thank you so much for the memberships. Always appreciate it. Best Nancy, same thing. You guys are so generous this evening. Calm Sunshine says, thoughts on Lori, on appeals Lori might file.
She did file one the other day. I've not read through it. It is 70 some odd pages. I'm going to do an episode on it out in Phoenix if I have time. But I believe that might have been for Charles. So she has, and she will. She's definitely going to, she's going to try everything to get off of this, because in her mind, she's not guilty. Chad sort of had the same mentality from what I've heard, which is, look, I didn't kill him, so I'm not guilty of murder. that was sort of his stance, even if he was the puppet master, because he didn't physically do it. He didn't feel like he should have been charged with murder. I feel Lori's the same. And I saw a comment, something about translated beings don't get sick. Well, maybe you lose your translated powers when you go in the pokey, just saying. Maybe you have to check
Um,
those in at the door and throw them away like everything else you brought with you.
um, let me see. I saw another question here that I liked, and I wanted to get to. Well, Lindsay, first of all, says, "Love this crossover. GG rocks." I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Lindsay.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Shy Gal asked about, if the client couldn't afford it, would you prefer to have someone there in court to watch the jury every single day? If the client could afford it, I would say absolutely. And I have been on trials where they can't afford it, and there is a jury consultant who helps you pick the jury and then just sits there through the whole thing, because it is that important just to have a set of eyes trying to pick up on these little micro inclinations coming from the jury. But it is really not all that common, maybe in big corporate litigation or something.
I would love to do that, Josh, to be honest with you.
That would be
Like
your job. Yeah.
that would be, I love what I do now. I said 80s DJ, 80s, 90s, 70s, 80s DJ might tempt me. But no, I think being a jury consultant would be fun,
Oh yeah.
because, and I think too, like when you have somebody who's not an attorney that doesn't have that extended knowledge about the legal system, and you're just kind of looking at it as any common person would that might get picked for jury duty. I just think it's a very interesting job.
Oh yeah. No,
But it would be
it is.
so hard if it's a bad case like a molestation, or
Yeah.
especially with children. I don't think I could say, here's what you do. I think
Right.
I would feel dirty. So
No, it was the part of, when I was a prosecutor, it was the part that I was most nervous about when I first started, like voir dire and speaking to jurors and jury selection. And by the time I had left the office, it was the part that I by far enjoyed the most. Just this opportunity to like speak with people and learn a little bit about them, and hopefully kind of, you're trying to charm them a little bit, get them to be on your side, maybe sprinkle a little of indoctrination in there where you can get away with it. It was a real skill that I think um oftentimes gets overlooked. I mean, many times you've lost or won a case in how you've picked a jury, and you don't realize it till the very end.
yeah.
I got one more hard-hitting question for you here, Gigi, and then I'm going to let you go. But Emily Flotilla says, "Are you going to CrimeCon this year?"
So I have a table.
Ah,
It's just gonna be the kind of the logistics of getting my youngest ready for her freshman year. She's cheering. So my plan is yes. I was joking and said I may have to create like an OnlyFans page for middle-aged moms to be able to afford to go, but no, I'm teasing. No, but I mean, there's got to be a market for like middle-aged moms with a wobbly belly, right?
sure.
But no, the plan right now, yes, is to go. And Colby Ryan and or Lieutenant Ray Hermosillo are going to be there this year. So if you have followed this case, you'll be able to meet these two amazing men who have been so deeply affected by the evilness in this case. And I'm really excited that they're going to be there this year to meet the people that have supported them all these years. So fingers crossed, she was at a, what do you call them, a uniform school for 3 years in middle school. And now it's like she can pick her own wardrobe. So it's like, here we go, right there in September. But no, the plan is to go. Yeah, I'm really excited. I love Colorado. Can't wait to show my kids. They're 18, my two oldest now, so they can come. So we're making this a family thing.
Good. Well, I hope to see. We are planning on going. I mean, that's, we haven't, like, same as you, haven't worked out all the logistics, but we're planning on being there, and I will definitely come by and say hi.
You
And
better, or I'll hunt you down, man.
I know. And yeah, they're starting to announce on the CrimeCon website and Instagram and everything else some of the guests that they're having. It's going to be a really good one. Every year I
It's
feel
going to
like
be
it
a
gets
great
better and
year.
better. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
You are the best. Thank you so much. This was fantastic. Tell folks, you can check out Pretty Lies and Alibis, but do you have some programming coming up that you want people to know about, or is it just going to be Lori Vallow all day, every day for the next few weeks?
Yeah, I'm streaming. I was doing daily updates on Karen Reed, but can't do two.
Yeah.
So next week, a lot of YouTube shorts at breaks to kind of talk about what's going on in that courtroom. And then every night, a recap of the day's testimony in an hour or less. And sometimes when I'm out, boots on the ground, I may go on like Ashley Banfield. So I'll put that on my socials. But very busy week, but so ready to see justice for Brandon play out there in Phoenix and end this part of the whole process. And, then all these family members can finally move on without something looming in the courts. And I think that it's a long time coming, and we're all ready for it. So,
Yeah.
yep, just keep your
Yeah.
eyes on my socials. If you're not subscribed to YouTube, go hit subscribe. And if you want notifications of when I do those little updates or maybe go live, kind of an impromptu way, click that bell icon and I'll hook y'all up. I'll let you know what's going on out there in that courtroom that you can't see on TV.
Love it. Love it. We're putting all your socials up in the chat and everything. So please, everybody, give
Thank you.
Gigi a follow, and thank you for supporting her. And Gigi, thank you again.
Yes. And
Appreciate
thanks
you.
to everybody. I've read all your comments and I appreciate all of them. So y'all have a good rest of your show. I'm going to be watching from my phone.
Okay. Sounds good.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye, guys.
Oh, she's so fantastic. Thank you so much, Gigi. All right. That was fantastic. As a matter of fact, became a YouTube member, as a matter of fact. So thank you so much for that. Thank you guys all for being so active with the super chats and thank yous and the memberships and the gifting of memberships this evening. Gigi's fantastic. If you're not already following her, you should be, especially when she really digs into a case. It's hard to, she is the best that there is at covering these cases in details and giving you those little bits and pieces. And she's going to be there. So you'll get that added kind of flavor of what it's like inside of the courtroom. All right. Drum roll, please. Do we have the results on the poll? I think that we do. 43% Karen Reed. Karen Reed showing up strong. I know that I can hear the collective group of people going, yay, and then the other collective group of people going, oh, well, stick around. We'll try to get to some of the other stuff too. We've got some time, but let's talk a little bit about Karen Reed. First of all, this really interesting motion was filed this week. Am I able to put this up here, Kaylin, or do you not want me to touch your things? Okay, she says I can add it. This is let me see. Hope you guys are able to see that. Anyhow, this was a motion that was filed within this week, June 2nd, pardon me. So it was filed 2 days ago by the defense. And it's interesting because I've never seen something like this before. And someone had referenced this. I was on Joe Giacalone's channel, True Crime with the Sarge. He's such a fantastic guy. And somebody had asked me about this motion, and I had not heard about it being filed. Thank you, Southern Cali B. I am incredibly tech savvy. And I did not know that this motion was filed. So as soon as we were done, I tracked it down and found it and looked into it. And it's kind of interesting, and I thought worth chatting a little bit about. And then we could get into, some of the witnesses that have testified this week and whether or not, is the defense case, is the prosecution case over, or is the defense case dead in the water? I think what it's become one of my favorite pastimes during this trial has been going on Twitter every day. If you weren't able to watch everything during the day, you can go online on something like Twitter after court and get a fair assessment of what took place that day. And by fair assessment, I mean, it will be one tweet saying the Commonwealth's case is completely over and completely crushed, and there's no recovery from this, followed by a tweet from somebody else saying the defense better be looking for a plea deal because she's going to prison for the rest of it. It's just amazing how we all live in the same universe where everybody can view this thing so diametrically differently. Anyhow, we'll get into some of the witnesses, but the defense filed this motion. It's called Defendant's Motion to Present a Missing Witness Argument and Request for Subsequent Instruction. So one of the things you are allowed to comment on is the failure to call reasonable witnesses. And this is not something new, but, for the prosecution, if the defense is trying to argue some sort of alibi. Let's just take a hypothetical situation, not this case, but if they're trying to argue some sort of an alibi, let's say, I was at this location, I wasn't where the murder took place. The prosecution can bring out, let's say that they said that they were at a grocery store, whatever. The prosecution can, in closing arguments, say, listen, they've presented to you this argument, this defense, and they have not supported it. If this is true, where is the store clerk? Where is the surveillance video? Where are the other things to support this argument? And you can point that out to jurors. One thing as the prosecution you cannot do is what's called Griffin error, which is a big no-no. And that is say, well, the one person who could tell you where they were from is sitting right over there and they didn't take the stand. There was a famous argument that led to that case talking about, something like there's 12 easy steps they could have taken from the defense table to the witness stand to explain to you all of this stuff. Commenting on the defendant's failure to take the stand is the one thing you cannot comment on, and that will create immediate reversible error, immediate mistrial. So you have to avoid that. But as the prosecution, you can comment on if they didn't call reasonable witnesses to support their defense. Same for the defense attacking the prosecution. If the prosecution doesn't put on reasonable witnesses, I had a case as a defense attorney where somebody was accused of assaulting someone else. And I made a big deal over the fact that they didn't put any medical records in. They're claiming these injuries. They had somebody talk about the injuries, but you don't get to accuse someone of injuries without presenting evidence of the injuries. And that was something I was allowed to comment on. And by the way, comment on, even though those medical documents did exist, the failure to actually have that introduced was something you're allowed to comment on. So the defense is saying here, hey, listen, the prosecution has, and we've all noticed this, not called a couple of key figures from the first time around. They did not call Michael Proctor. They did not call Brian Albert. And they did not call Brian Higgins. And they're saying, listen, Your Honor, we want more than just being able to point that out. We want an instruction given to the jurors at the end of all of this. And this is, I'm going to read you a couple of quotes from this motion. This is on page 1. It is appropriate for the court to give a missing witness instruction where a party has knowledge of a person who can be located and brought forward, who is friendly to or at least not hostility disposed toward the party, and who can be expected to give testimony of distinct importance to the case. The party would naturally offer this person as a witness. And if that is all true without explanation, then the jury may infer that the prospective witness would have given testimony unfavorable to that party. So that's the real killer here, is they're asking that if the jury believes that Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, or Michael Proctor would have been a natural witness for the prosecution to have called, not only can they find that to be bizarre, and not only can the defense point out that they should have called them, but they can even draw the inference that the reason they didn't call them is they would have said something unfavorable to the prosecution. That's a pretty powerful argument to make. That's just some pretty powerful stuff. Oh, and I wanted to point out that I was able to get this document from the As the Gavel Drops Discord. So thank you guys so much for that. All right. So think about that. First of all, an instruction is way more powerful than an argument. An instruction from the court, if you find that the prosecution, the Commonwealth's failure to call Michael Proctor, Brian Higgins, or Brian Albert was done without a satisfactory reason, you can infer that there was something bad they were going to say. That you would love to have that as the defense in this case. One other quote I'll give you from this whole thing, and the reason why they think that they should get have this instruction, found from page 6. I'll turn to that for you with my previously alluded to tech wizardry. there is a critical distinction between argument by counsel and the argument presented by the Commonwealth is insufficient and a missing witness argument. However, in order to argue or ask the jury to draw any conclusions as the substance of the evidence that has not been produced, counsel must first seek judicial consent to present an argument and have a subsequent instruction follow suit. So they're saying, listen, Your Honor, no good reason has been presented why the prosecution should not have called these people. And because they didn't do that, we want an instruction given. Really great argument. Really interesting argument. I applaud it. I applaud any time defense attorneys are thinking outside of the box and trying to get stuff. I don't know if they will get that here, with one caveat. One, the defense really wants this case to be about the people inside the house, okay? They really want it to be about the people inside the house and what they did or didn't do that evening. The prosecution, however, though, is saying our crime scene has nothing to do with that house. Our crime scene is outside of that house. Our crime scene didn't involve anyone inside of that house. Our crime scene involved one person and one victim, the defendant who's sitting right there and the man who got out of the car that she ran over. Therefore, trying to say that logical witnesses would be the people inside of the house is the defense case, not the Commonwealth's case. And that's what Brennan has pointed out more than once, including with this whole issue about the mistrial that we'll get into next. But he's saying, listen, you're trying to make it logical by saying that these people are important to your theory. They're not important to my theory. The one caveat on this is Michael Proctor. As the lead investigator, it is hard to say not calling him is without any or doesn't need to be explained. Put it that way. He was a obvious missing person in this whole thing, obvious missing witness, and the defense is saying, yes, we should then be able to not only comment on it, but allow the jurors to draw inferences from it. The only counter argument from the prosecution, we don't have the response to this. I hope it's not out yet. I don't have it, at least, is that you got all that. You got all the bad stuff on Michael Proctor. You got all his horrible text messages. That's the reason. And giving the jurors instructions beyond that would be allowing them to infer things that simply don't exist. Whatever. We'll see. This could be an interesting motion. We'll see how it all plays out. I'll tell you guys my reactions to see after the judge makes her determination on it, and whatever arguments are made in court. The other thing I wanted to turn to is this motion for a mistrial made by Alessi during the presentation of Dr. Marie Russell's testimony. First of all, some interesting witnesses, and I'll just comment on them this week. I think it was a little bit of a mixed bag for the defense, honestly. Kelly Dever, whatever. I don't want to get yelled at by her. She's a Boston police officer now. She was a officer with Kenton at the time. She testified. Really interesting kind of strategic move by the defense. I think, honestly, if we're being honest, if they had to do it over again, they would not have called her. They wanted her to give testimony from what she had told agents before and about what she had seen as far as people going into the Sally Port and how long they had been in the Sally Port. And I don't think that Alan Jackson's on her Christmas card list. There was obviously no love lost between the two of these people, but they knew that going in. And that's my question is, Alan knew that going in. She wasn't going to be favorable. Why did he call her? Well, he really wanted her to say what she had told federal agents, which was that they went into the Sally Port for an inordinate period of time. But in doing that, she gets up there and says, yeah, but I explained to you that I had evidence presented to me that I was wrong on that, and that I simply timing wise could not have seen the thing I thought I saw. Therefore, my memory was false. And therefore, you pressuring me to testify to that was essentially asking me to come here and lie on the stand. And you told me if I didn't, I would perjure myself. And I thought, holy moly, that did not play out the way that they had planned. I think that Alan thought, yeah, she's not going to be helpful. Yeah, she's not going to be friendly, but she's going to admit what she told agents before. But this whole idea about perjury being threatened and I'm not lying and I realized she said some stuff about do the right thing, all of that. End of the day, that is not the way you want this to go as the defense. As a defense attorney, you're always really sensitive to the idea that anybody who's going to accuse you of any kind of shenanigans, and when you got a witness on the stand essentially saying exactly that, not worth the squeeze, in my view. Had they been able to do it over again, I think we could all agree they probably would have just moved on without that small bit of information they got out of her. Dever was between a rock and a hard place. I mean, she did not want to be there. I agree with you, Afton, and I think she did not. I don't think she came off as all that credible or likable, but I think the idea that she was being threatened or potentially threatened by the defense did not play well. Then we had Dr. Marie Russell, who testified. Well, before I move on here, Garden Gold, thank you so much, says, if I'm a juror, calling Dever did not help the defense. Her snarkiness and dropping words like perjury and conspiracy, she screwed up, owned it. Jackson didn't look good. I agree. And listen, doesn't mean the end of the case. Sometimes you win them, sometimes you lose them. This defense, by the way, is obviously a take risks type of defense team. And they thought this was a risk they were willing to take. And I just don't think it turned out well for them. But thank you for that, Garden Girl. And then LL says, fun fact, I served my first jury duty in the very courtroom in Dedham. And tomorrow I will serve my fourth jury duty in downtown Los Angeles. How do you get on 4 different juries is my biggest question. Say hello to whoever the judge is and whoever the prosecutor is in downtown Los Angeles. You're now in my neck of the woods, but I am impressed that one, that you've been able to serve on that many juries, and 2, that you've been picked for that many juries. So you must come across as a very reasonable person, LL, and thank you for that. So then Dr. Marie Russell gets on. This is the dog bite expert. I will say this. I thought she was an excellent expert witness. She did exactly what you hope your expert witnesses will do, which is don't get into, this is going to be awful, but don't get into a dogfight with the attorney who's cross-examining you. That is not your job. I've told my witnesses this all the time. Don't advocate. Don't fight. Don't argue. That's my job. Let me do my job. You just get up there and answer the questions. And even if those questions being asked sometimes elicit what you feel might be unfavorable testimony, answer it. Just answer it. I get to go up and ask other questions on redirect. And that's what I love doing. And that's my job. Let me be the one arguing. You just answer the questions. For the vast majority of that, I felt that she did that. I felt that she kept her kind of, frustration and attitude in check. She answered questions, even if some of the questions on cross were, obviously harmful to her overall testimony. She just answered them, moved on. Okay, great. It takes the sting out of it. But when you start fighting, now jurors are taking notes. That all being said, to just irritate the other half of all of you, I thought Brennan was remarkable. I thought he did a fantastic job on cross-examination. I think he's demonstrated himself to be a really, really good attorney on cross-examination. And I thought he handled Dr. Russell about as good as anybody could have handled her. Best gun losing detective says, sorry, Josh, I looked at Dever differently. I think it showed that she was pressured by Boston PD to do the right thing based on what they wanted and not a good for the defense. And I get that too. And listen, I appreciate you telling me you disagree. I did not take the whole do the right thing to have as sinister an undertone as a lot of people did. And obviously, Alan wanted that highlighted. Weren't you told, you brought in to the department head and they told you do the right thing. Here's the way I think Dever came out. If you're leaning defense, probably made you lean more. If you're leaning Commonwealth, probably made you lean more. Did it move anybody from one side to the other? I think not, but I appreciate your take on that bust gun losing detective. I love that name. So anyhow, I thought Brennan did a remarkable job. I thought his whole point was to highlight how her opinion can appear to have been myopic, and that what she was shown was photographs, and based on those photographs alone, she drew a conclusion, and then she stuck with it in spite of evidence to the contrary. And so in doing that, and this is just good cross-examination 101, you go through all of the things that the expert did consider and did not consider. Okay, let's talk about some of the things that you considered. You considered the photograph. You considered, the police reports. You considered the medical examiner's report. Great. How about the debris field? Did you consider the debris field? And you're telling us that played no role in what you were doing? Did you consider other surrounding circumstances? And that's a really good point in this, because you cannot arrive at an opinion as to what those injuries are in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is, how strong of an opinion would she have that this was a dog bite if we knew that there was no dog within 100 miles of this location? How strong would her opinion be for, let's say her opinion was it was a car impact, if there was no debris field? I mean, you have to consider things like a debris field of broken glass and the idea that there was a dog inside that house. I mean, I don't think we would be even talking dog bites if there wasn't a dog inside of that house. That is the whole reason why this makes any kind of sense for the defense, is that there was a dog inside that house. So if there was no dog inside that house, I think you'd have a lot of jurors going like, dogs? What do we do? Where'd the dog come from? I missed that. I missed that part in the opening credits. Where did the dog come from? So he pointed out things that she did not consider. And along the way, he said, he went into this line of questioning about the lack thereof of canine DNA, that no canine DNA was recovered from these areas where allegedly you're saying a dog bit John O'Keefe. And the defense, their heads collectively explode all at once. And Alessi gets up, and I like Alessi. He gets up. He's a character. Everybody in this trial is a character. It's incredible. Alessi gets up, and I love that he goes to the podium with no notes whatsoever, because he's that furious, and he's just vibrating inside of his suit. He's so upset. And he says to the judge that he strongly and vigorously requests a mistrial with prejudice. And it was this kind of, moment. You could almost hear the Law and Order bong bong in the background. It was just that, time for the commercial break. Oh my God, tune in next week. But and I always love when attorneys add in that they vigorously request something, because it just makes me think, well, what are you doing otherwise? Are you just mailing it in? Anyhow, his whole point was, it was essentially a facts not an evidence argument. He's saying Hank Brennan is backdooring in evidence that has not been presented to this jury. He's asking about DNA testing that this jury has never heard from. And therefore, the jury has now been exposed to evidence not in, or facts not in evidence. And this is misconduct, and it's error, and we need a mistrial. Brennan's argument is, listen, and this goes back to what I was kind of talking about earlier. Brennan's argument is, I don't have to preemptively address the defense case. I'm allowed to put on my case. I don't have to anticipate the arguments that they're going to make and therefore address them preemptively in my case. The first time dog bites became an issue is with the defense and this witness right here. And so the first time I'm asking questions about anything dealing with dog bites is right here. And I'm allowed to ask a expert about things that they did and did not consider, including inadmissible evidence. And that is true. You are allowed to cross-examine an expert on things that might include hearsay or documents that have had no foundation relate to them, because they're giving an opinion, and their opinion, their brain has been filled up with a bunch of things that don't really have to do with the rules of evidence. So, did she consider that no dog DNA had been discovered? You're allowed to ask that. Now, the problem is that is something that the jurors have not heard. And how do we address that? Well, in order to complete the impeachment here, Alessi would have to, in his rebuttal, and he's alluded to this, in his rebuttal, present that actual evidence on dog DNA. And I think that he will do that to complete the impeachment of this witness. Where there might be an issue is if he doesn't do that. If he closes out his case in rebuttal and never calls the witness regarding the dog DNA, then as the defense, I think they should get some sort of instruction, but has the damage already been done at that point? So that's why the judge denied it. That's why I do love one thing that Canoni does is she'll allow these kind of really heated arguments. Then she'll say, I'm taking it under advisement. She'll take a half-hour break or break for the day and then come back and just deny it without further question and move on. Because I think she knows if she denies it while everybody's sitting there, they're going to ask for further argument. And she just kind of walks back in, says, motion for mistrial denied. I'm going to allow him to question on the DNA. Now moving forward. Sarcasm, thank you so much, says they didn't find canine DNA, but they did find pig DNA and keratinized tissue, which is gum tissue. I hoped AJ and team would have addressed this. Love y'all. I think they will at the appropriate time. I think that if Brennan does call the animal DNA expert to say there was no canine DNA, but there was pig DNA, they'll get into all of that. Like they did the first time during trial, except the only difference was it was done during the prosecution's case in chief rather than during rebuttal. And Alessi, and I honestly agree with his strategy. It's like, why am I going to start preemptively combating your arguments? I'm going to let them make that argument first. I don't know what arguments they're going to make. They're telling me they're going to make these. They're telling me they're going to call Dr. Russell, but I'm not going to bring these things up. Let them bring it up, and then I'll rebut it if I have to. So that's what's happening here. Thank you, Sarcasm, for that. All right. So that was Marie Russell. That was the mistrial. And then we had Dighton Police Sergeant Nicholas Barros. And I will say, I feel like there's been some misses for the defense. There's been some shaky starts. There's been some stuff that they thought were going to be home runs that didn't entirely turn into home runs. This has probably been their strongest witness yet. And he testified, and I know that Lucky testified today about not seeing anybody in the snow. I don't feel that that is impactful as many of you all might feel it is. To me, the proving the negative is a difficult thing. Just because I didn't see something doesn't mean something didn't exist. So I'm not entirely persuaded by that. Any of you who've lived in snow know how snow can blanket things and really obscure the shape of things. I'm really not. I think it was fantastic. I know I'm on a total aside right now. I think it's fantastic that the defense went out and found him. I think that that's probably the most impactful thing, is that they went and found the plow driver and that he's testifying on their behalf. I think that shows the jury, if nothing else, an intent to get to the bottom of things by the defense. But the fact that he didn't see anything is not all that persuasive to me. But this witness is. And what he is, first of all, he's a cop. whenever you're the defense calling a cop in your case and that cop is giving favorable testimony to your case, that's powerful stuff. That is really flipping the script. And that, I think, does have an impact on jurors. And I felt that he was also another very honest witness. He admitted things like memory issues. He admitted things like he misremembered some things here or there. JC Broadway, I agree with you. I think he came across as very credible. I know Brennan tried to make a big deal about the fact that he met the defense team at a hotel. And I think that is bizarre. I didn't get really a good explanation as to why they needed to meet him in person at a hotel for things that could have taken place over the phone. But, Brennan brought that up. I don't think that really tipped the scales all that much. Brennan did point out, I think again, he's very good at cross-examination. He takes these witnesses who seem like they're completely just knockout punches for the defense and manages to do some damage to them. But end of the day, you have, for the first time, I think, a witness who is introducing before the jury not just the idea of sloppy, lazy police work, but perhaps the manipulation of evidence. And if he is saying, listen, I had no, again, forgive this, dog in the fight here. I'm just showing up. I'm a cop. They told me to show up. I don't even work for that police force. I showed up to an area where a car was going to be impounded. I sat around. I noticed a taillight. I noticed damage to it. And I will tell you that the damage I saw is not the same damage that I saw on that vehicle later. And that's all I'm here to tell you. I'm not here to tell you innocent or guilty or I was involved in the investigation or not. This is just something I saw. That's powerful stuff. And even if you can make that guy sound like he's got some memory issues and he wasn't paying all that much attention, now you've planted that seed. And maybe that's all the defense needs, is to plant that seed of, hey, was something going on here? Was there some shenanigans taking place here? And maybe he accomplished that. I don't know. I just think of so far of the witnesses that I have heard, he's the one that seems to be the most impactful to me. I know I've missed a lot of questions. I'm going to see if I've got any. I imagine it's just a bunch of people telling me that I can go pound sand. Let me see. Angie Hilton says, what are your thoughts on the judge allowing the dog DNA question to come in? We kind of touched on that. I think it was the right thing. I think that the only thing that Brennan needs to do is now complete that impeachment. I think we got a lot of these. Oh, look at this. We got a Facebook. Patty Laurie, thank you so much for tuning in from Facebook. I like that. Our Facebook crew. Oh, okay. Here's one last one, a good one to bring us out on. Second Beach Gal says, do attorneys take 2 years off after a big case like this? I'll tell you what, they sure want to. They sure want to. When you are, however, a very highly sought after defense attorney like Alan Jackson and David Yannetti, and I imagine everybody coming out of this case will be, probably won't have that luxury. And you got bills to pay. You're buying expensive suits and driving fancy cars. Those things don't pay for themselves. So you need to pick up that next case coming quickly. All right. My producer's barking at me. All right. What's the next one in the poll? She's saying we got to do one more topic. Jojo Tink RN says, Josh, I don't know if anyone could tell you to pound sand. Well, that's very nice of you. What am I missing here? Here's the barker. Here's the person shouting orders at me. Oh, do you have it already? Did I mess you up, Kaylin? Decker. Okay, Decker. Oh, great. The saddest one of the bunch. This is a really awful case. I don't have the most info to share with you guys because it's still kind of an ongoing investigation. But it has made news recently. It's a tragedy of a case that we will continue to follow and update you guys on. But this is out of Wenatchee, Washington, in central Washington. I'm sure that I am not getting that name right, so I apologize. But this involves this is Travis Decker right here. He's a military veteran going through a divorce, has 3 beautiful girls. This is the part that just absolutely tears me apart. Yeah, trigger warning here. Thank you, Afton, for that. This is it. If violence with children bothers you, maybe not the thing that you want to be listening to. Anyhow, going through a divorce, he is obviously going through some sort of mental health decline as well. He's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. He is under medication. He is part of his visitation and even included that he take medication. But at this time, he's living out of his truck. He's homeless. You can see from the short amount of reporting that we've done that he's kind of spiraling out of control. Anyhow, he takes Peyton, age 9, Evelyn, age 8, and Decker, age 5, with him for what is supposed to be visitation. He's supposed to return them to their mother at 8 p.m. She reports them missing to the police by 9:45 p.m. And the reason I point that out is that is a very short period of time for the mother to immediately jump to the conclusion that I need to get the police involved. And that's because I think she knew this was a dangerous situation. And I think she knew that perhaps this could have turned really, really bad. And so, with less than 2 hours of them not showing up, she's reporting it to the police. And her nightmares do come true. And it's incredibly sad because the girls are found at a campground some 70 miles east of Seattle. I'm going to have a hard time thinking about this one for a long time. They are found zip tied. They have plastic bags over their head and they've been asphyxiated. He is still missing. So this is an ongoing investigation. Alicia K. Mayo points out that Grizzly True Crime has done a video on this case. I encourage you guys to go check it out if you are interested. These ones, they bother you. It's horrible stuff to think about. But it also is, important stuff to think about too. And so if you want to hear more about it, I encourage you to go over to Grizzly True Crime and check it out. We'll continue to keep you updated here, but this one is just, however someone's life, no matter how bad it gets, the idea that they could get to the point where they would rob this earth of these 3 beautiful kids is just beyond me. So anyhow, we're running out of time though. You guys are all fantastic for sticking around. Let me give you some quick announcements before I let you go. First of all, Monday, if you missed it, we had in our conversation series, we sat down with Linda from It's a Crime, had a really great conversation. Linda's a fantastic person and talked a lot about it was a very meta conversation to talk about what is it put somebody through to actually cover true crime and make that their career, which she has done. And she's talked about, sometimes it takes a toll and sometimes it's difficult to talk about these cases. Right on cue case that we were just talking about, that's a difficult case to really think about and dig into. So check that one out. That's already out on our channel. Then all this week, join all the cool kids over at Courtroom Confidential live trials as we watch the Karen Reed trial. We've been having a really big group show up and watching that live stream and a very robust and friendly chat. So if you guys want to follow the Karen Reed trial, please go over to our sister channel, Courtroom Confidential live trials. And I've been trying to peek my face in here or there to add my thoughts along the way. So it was always nice to see all you folks there. Then on Saturday, of course, we will have our weekly roundup that premieres at 6 a.m. Pacific, 5 or 9 a.m. Eastern. Oh, yeah, there's no court tomorrow in Karen Reed. So don't show up there tomorrow, but there is court on Friday. And then in the saddest of news, we do not have a Sunday Fun Day this week. We are taking the weekend off because we've got a bunch of other stuff that we are working on, and we just could not figure out how to fit it into our schedule and didn't want to make it something that you wouldn't enjoy. But that doesn't mean we don't need your messages. So please continue to go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and leave us messages. And I do not set a time as far as if you left a message, last week and we've moved on a week or two. I go back to the old ones and I try to answer as many of these things as I possibly can. And it's only for time constraints or if they're kind of repeat questions or something that I don't get to them. So I appreciate you guys taking the time. If you take the time to leave a message, I'm going to take the time to try to answer them for you. And then on Monday, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to go live on Monday. We usually do Mondays as a recorded premiere of an interview, but we don't have that for you this week. So we're going to go live and we're still figuring it out. We may have a guest that's to be determined. It may just be me. We're trying to figure out what we're going to talk about. I think we might just kind of do a weekend preview sort of a thing, but that will be on Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. I look forward to seeing all of you there. I will have had a very long day in a court that's very, very far away, but I'm looking forward to it anyways. So that is on Monday. I want to give a very special thanks to our newest members, to Surther River, Callie Dime, Arlene Jones, Kathy Trout, Pantufel, Forever Green, Purple Amaryllis, Courtney D, Wayflare, V. Lewis Arthur, Bullets and Bling, Calm Sunshine, Mikey S, Sarah Fitzgerald, Hanks, Worn Out Eraser, Sam Tires, Kim Watson. My cat's name is Karen. Jason Lazowski, Word Sleuth 992, Lori, YouTube Bad Actors, Julie Todd, Arlene W, Janet Studdard, Natasha Richardson, Lillian, Lacey Lovett, Andrea Swanger, Brenda Redman, and Carolyn Hurtado. Thank you guys all so much for making the decision to be part of our membership program. And before I let you go, wanted to give a big shout out to everyone who makes this all possible. Thank you, Kaylin, and thank you, Tiffany, and thank you to our mods, Afton and Shy Gal. And thank you guys all for sticking around and talking to us on a Wednesday night. You're all the best. Have a wonderful evening, and I will see you again soon. Take care, everybody.